listening to The Sustainable Angler, and my daddy's the host.
All right, well, special thanks to my sweetheart for the introduction, and welcome to the Sustainable Angler Podcast. I'm Rick Crawford, angler, sustainability consultant, and founder of Emerger Strategies. This season, we're launching the Sustainability Blueprint, a deep dive into how fishing and outdoor brands can grow, meet retailer demands, navigate emerging regulations, and protect the places we all love. If you're part of the fishing and outdoor industry, this is your roadmap to surviving and thriving in a changing world. Let's build better brands and protect what we love together. Today on The Sustainable Angler, I'm joined by Keith Shattenkirk. Keith is the Program Officer for Healthy Lands and Waters at Patagonia, and we talk about Keith's interesting path to conservation, from working on Wall Street to Patagonia, the latest threats to our public lands, especially the Boundary Waters and Grand Staircase National Monument, the importance of advocacy and taking action, why your brand should join the Conservation Alliance, and Keith shares what gives him hope about the future. And before we dive into the interview, I just want to say thank you. I'm truly grateful that you take the time to listen to this podcast. I hope these conversations inspire you to take action for nature. If you're enjoying the show, a quick free way to support it is by leaving a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcast or Spotify. The Sustainable Angler is available anywhere you listen to podcasts and is also airing Saturdays at 2 p.m. on Charleston's first and only community-supported radio station, OWN Radio, 96.3 FM. This episode of The Sustainable Angler is brought to you by Emerger Strategies, Ecolytics, and a New Earth Project, the sustainability initiative of Atlantic Packaging. Hey everybody, Rick Crawford here. If you're running a fishing or outdoor brand, you probably got into this business for the freedom, a desire to work in an industry that you actually care about, and to protect what you love, not wrestle with sustainability scorecards and compliance regulations. But here's the truth. Retailers and regulators are paying close attention, and the brands that can answer clearly are the ones that keep their products on the shelf. That's where Emerger Strategies comes in. We help brands get retailer and regulator ready, and we help you make the business case for sustainability, so compliance strengthens your brand instead of slowing it down. That's why I built the Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint. It's a clear, practical roadmap that shows you what matters, what's coming, and gets your sustainability house in order in 30 days. If you want to protect your brand, your margins, and what you love, you'll find the blueprint at emergerstrategies.com. If you're running a fishing, outdoor, food, or apparel brand, sustainability isn't just marketing. It's directly tied to the landscapes, waterways, and communities your business depends on. But actually tracking and improving your impact can get complicated fast. Ecolytics is a software platform that helps values-driven companies measure and manage their environmental and social impact all in one place. Ecolytics helps replace scattered spreadsheets with a clear system for tracking things like emissions, sourcing practices, and social impact, so you know where you stand and what to improve next. They specialize in helping companies pursue B Corp certification, one of the most rigorous and respected standards for business sustainability. What I appreciate is that Ecolytics works hand in hand with sustainability consultants, including folks like me. That means companies get expert guidance and a platform that keeps the work organized, credible, and audit ready. Whether you're exploring B Corp certification or just getting started with sustainability as a business, Ecolytics turns your good intentions into measurable action. To learn more, visit ecolytics.io. That's ECOLYTICS.io, and mention the Sustainable Angler podcast to get a discount on your first year subscription. Thanks to Ecolytics for supporting the show and for supporting businesses that protect the places we love.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate the invite.
Absolutely. So Keith, a little bit of background for the folks listening, Keith and I met through the Conservation Alliance because we're both members, or Patagonia is a member and Emerger Strategies is a member. But truthfully, I don't know that much about you and your background, other than I know that we're probably have similar beliefs on a lot of things. But I thought we'd get things kicked off if you could kind of provide some background on yourself, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper.
Yeah, happy to do that. So I took an interesting path to conservation. When I graduated college, I actually started out working on Wall Street. I grew up in the suburbs of Manhattan, seemed to be the way that a lot of people were going, and I just kind of followed the crowd. But realized pretty quickly that it wasn't for me. I also started in 2008 during the crash, which was an interesting time, but it was a good experience in that I learned what I didn't want to do. I kind of found myself the entire time thinking about other options, right, and being more drawn to renewable stocks and environmental sustainability. I had a dream of becoming a wildlife photographer that never panned out. But I used that moment as a time to switch gears. I moved out to California back in 2010 and actually started working for the Anaheim Ducks, but became a little bit more involved in the sustainability operations of the team and of the arena, and decided if I really wanted to pursue this as a career, then I should go back to school. So I went to the Brent School at UC Santa Barbara for a master's in environmental science and management, and ended up working a lot on fisheries issues. So I did a thesis around small-scale fisheries in developing countries and how to manage some of the trade-offs that these communities were seeing in terms of abundance and harvest and profit. Worked for NOAA for a little bit after that, focusing on domestic swordfish issues. Started working at another foundation doing marine protected area implementation and species conservation, and then found my way to Patagonia. I started out just managing our freshwater portfolio of grant making, but due to the pandemic and a need for a program officer to focus on public lands, ended up incorporating that into my portfolio as well. So yeah, at Patagonia, I am, like you said, the program officer for healthy lands and waters. So what that means is I manage our grant making portfolio in the United States around land and water conservation issues. We, as a business, give away 1% of total sales to environmental nonprofits around the world. Just last year, I think we gave around $14.7 million in grants to over 824 organizations. My portfolio does not consist of all of that because that includes our regions in Europe and Asia. But really, my job is to stay connected to the environmental movement, understand what the threats are and the opportunities are in the United States, and make sure that we're supporting environmental nonprofits to carry out the work that we all care about. So it's been a long, winding road, but I'm happy that I ended up where I am. I'm at a company whose mission is to save the home planet, and that's seen in all aspects of the business. So really excited to be a part of that. We're a mission-driven for-profit company, which I think very few companies can say.
Yeah. And I mean, myself included, have been so inspired by Patagonia. I don't think Emerger Strategies would exist if I hadn't read Let My People Go Surfing. And I don't know that I would be a 1% for the Planet member if it wasn't for Patagonia. So hats off to y'all. Big fan of what y'all do, and appreciate all the inspiration. You mentioned just a second ago opportunities and threats has kind of caught my ear, and I know that Patagonia, as you've mentioned, has built a reputation for its environmental activism and advocacy. And so from your perspective as program officer for Healthy Lands and Waters, what are the biggest threats facing freshwater and coastal ecosystems right now?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I think when you look at everything the administration is trying to do currently, there are any number of threats that you can talk about, right? But it seems like they are trying to sacrifice the long-term health of all of these ecosystems for short-term gain, short-term profit. They're opening up coastal ecosystems, they're opening up public lands to oil and gas, to mining industries that are there for a quick buck and leave as soon as the profit dries up. Outdoor recreation is such a huge part of the economy. You have people who come and recreate. You have people who come to find themselves, create memories with families, hunt, fish, climb, whatever it is. And they keep coming back to these places, right? They don't come once and then never come back again. So they create this lifelong connection to these places that they pass down in generations. But the administration has an agenda of pursuing energy dominance, America first, and they want to open up these places to benefit, to benefit corporations, right? Not to benefit the American people. So every landscape, it feels like, is under threat. It seems like every week there's a new issue that we need to address or try to focus on. In some ways, it's challenging because there are so many distractions out there. But I think we need to try to stay laser focused on, what's happening overall, right? It's not really about one industry, but it's about this systematic dismantling of the frameworks that are in place to keep these places protected and to keep extractive industry out.
Yeah, it's a pretty wild times, and frankly, it's hard to keep up with. There's so much happening. And I think that's maybe part of their strategy, right? Is to almost like confuse people, like to the point of, oh, what can we do, But one of the things, or a couple of things you just said that came to mind that I think about is like with public lands and the economy, right? And how much I think the last numbers I've seen thrown around is like the outdoor recreation economy is $1.2 trillion. And I think about that firsthand because like me and my friends, I live in Charleston, South Carolina. We go down to the Everglades, which are America's public lands, and we stay in hotels and we eat at local restaurants. And I don't camp in chickees as much as I used to, sadly. But we used to camp in chickees. But we're down there supporting these local businesses that I think get overlooked too. Like think about all the small hotels or mom and pop shops that are in these communities that like their whole business is tied to the fact that people are coming down to recreate in these beautiful, unspoiled places. And if that beauty is taken away through mining or extraction or whatever it is, then there's also going to be a lot of small business owners who can't survive, which I just it's infuriating to me. But it's when you mention foreign mining companies, and maybe we'll dive into this a little bit with what's happening at the Boundary Waters is another perfect example, right? For those listening who maybe get caught up on public lands every once in a while, could you tell us a little bit more about what's happening there?
Yeah, of course. And I think before I get into that, one of the key arguments that you hear against a designation for protection is that it disrupts local economic growth. But there have been a number of studies shown over the last decade, and one most recently that shows that this just isn't the case, right? Monument designation, for example, is associated with stable economic trajectory, continued job growth, population growth, slight increases in income following the designation. So they are boons for the local economy. Granted, it's not a panacea. Designation alone is not going to automatically, cause an increase in salaries. It's up to the communities to figure out how to set up a framework to take advantage of that. But it does show benefits to local economies, which I think is often either forgotten or conveniently not mentioned in the talking points from the other side. And it's not, it is mom and pop organizations or companies in those areas. It's also brands like Patagonia, where people go and use our product and test our product. So it's very much important to our bottom line. It's very much important to our ethos. You mentioned boundary waters, and that's a great kind of example of what the administration is trying to do. So back during the Biden administration, they issued a 20-year mineral withdrawal to kind of stop the threat of extraction in the headwaters of the boundary waters. Twin Metals, which is a Chilean-owned mining company, wants to mine copper in the region, and they claim that it's not going to pollute this pristine ecosystem, right? This 1.1 million acre network of interconnected lakes and rivers and streams, a place that is considered America's wilderness, 165,000 visitors every year from all over the country. So you have this Chilean mining company coming in that wants to mine copper. They'll take the copper, they'll send it overseas to China to have it smelted, and then if we want to purchase that copper for national security, which is one of the reasons or one of the justifications that the administration is using for this, we're going to have to buy it on the open market, probably with a heavy tariff, right? So it's not being used for military planes. It's not really benefiting the local economy the same way that the outdoor recreation economy contributes to Minnesota's growth. So it's an interesting argument that they're trying to make, and I just don't see a lot of merit in it. And again, you'll have this Chilean company come in, they'll extract this copper, which is a polluting activity in its own right. There's not been a single copper sulfide mine in the United States that has operated without pollution. And then they'll leave once it's done. And what we're left with is cleaning up the bill, right? Because of the geology and hydrology of the area, it's the water flows to nearby parks, right? It supports I think 40% of Minnesota's 150 native fish species. You have anglers who go there for the grand slam of wilderness fishing, right? There's walleye, there's lake trout, smallmouth bass, northern pike, and trophy caliber fish, right? And all that is disrupted once you have these pollutants that leach into the waters. You have people that go there to canoe, to hike, to see wolves and lynx, and that's all under threat because of this attempt to open it up. Now, the administration says, it's in the headwaters. This isn't, we're not going to be fast tracking permits, but everything that we've seen from the administration has been moving towards increased extraction with less environmental review and little chance to actually challenge those actions in court. So, the House voted on a joint resolution to remove this withdrawal, which passed. Unfortunately, we haven't seen a Senate vote yet. We are unsure when it's going to come, but it could come any day. I think kind of geopolitics have put some things on pause, right? We are, we're launching missiles into Iran right now. There's Department of Homeland Security funding that is being held up for the protests that happened in Minnesota. All very real issues that push some of these things to the side, but I don't want us to forget that this is a very real threat, and we need to make sure that we're speaking up.
Yeah, and it seems like, so, first of all, having a foreign mining company take our resources to ship to China, of all places, is crazy. Like that makes no sense. But to even boil it down to something even more simple, I guess, is headwaters. Like, I think as anglers, we inherently know what that means, but do people understand? Like, if you pollute a headwater, that's everything downstream is going to see negative effects. I just don't see a lot of good coming from it. And so that the headwaters argument alone should be enough. Add to the fact that it's a foreign mining company taking our resources and shipping it somewhere else that we have to buy back with tariffs is insanity. I mean, it doesn't make it make sense.
I wish I could make it make sense. but you're right, it doesn't. And there's so many different arguments that you can lobby back, right? We talked about America First and that being a little bit of a fallacy given how this is structured. You talk about ecological impacts, economic impacts, impacts to local communities, impacts to tribes in the area, impacts on wildlife, visitor experience, right? It just seems very obvious that the consequences outweigh any potential gain that we might get as a country from opening this place up. So I don't understand it. I think there's a lot of people that don't. You have 70% of Minnesotans from all across the aisle, right, who support protecting the boundary waters. So we continue to see this instance where you have politicians who are not listening to their constituents and pursuing their own agendas. And it's really disheartening. But we talked about opportunities, right? And we can get into other opportunities as well. But we have a moment now to call our senators, and it's not just the senators or representatives from Minnesota, but we all have a duty, in my mind, to let our elected officials know what we care about and to urge them not to support this resolution that's moving forward.
Yeah, and that was going to be one of the questions I had too, right? Is like, as anglers, I feel like we're inherently conservationists, right? Just because we appreciate the resource on numerous levels, right? Spiritually, mental health, just plain fun, and we want to protect that. But I think you just pretty much answered it, right? The what can an angler do? And right now it seems like the number one thing you could do is no matter where you live is to contact your members of Congress and let them know that this is not something you agree with. And yeah, I think too, and correct me if I'm wrong, Patagonia has kind of an easy button for that advocacy. If that's right, and I'll put a link, everyone, in the podcast description for this. But there's a way to do that through Patagonia's website in there?
Yeah, that's correct. One of the ways that we support our nonprofits is to make sure that we're using our microphone to raise the alarm on some of these issues, and to provide them with easy opportunities to engage. So we have action alerts up on Patagonia Action Works, which is a platform where our partners can post opportunities for citizens to get engaged. We try to highlight the local nonprofits that are working on this issue, like Save the Boundary Waters, Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, and others. So there are certainly opportunities where folks can go, and we provide a script. We provide an easy connection to your congressperson to call and leave a message or talk to someone. And try to lower the bar so that it's easy for folks. It can be a little intimidating, I think, calling your member of Congress. Yeah. So we try to make that as easy as possible. And that's not just boundary waters, right? We do that across the country for different issues. So Patagonia Action Works, we've had over 1 million actions initiated through Action Works globally, 500,000 in the United States. So we've had 500,000 people click on links that our nonprofits have posted to engage on freshwater issues, public lands issues, climate change issues. Just recently for Boundary Waters, we had about 40,000 people call into their House representative. So we try to do the best that we can to make sure that we're supporting the groups. So in addition to that, right, if you're an angler, there's Sportsmen for the Boundary Waters, there's Friends of the Boundary Waters. They can engage on their websites. They have action alerts as well. You can follow these groups. They do their best, and they do a great job keeping folks in the loop on when they need to mobilize. So, just because it's happening in Minnesota and you might be based in South Carolina, it doesn't really matter, right? Because these threats set a precedent for attacks in other parts of the country. So I think the stronger that we can unite, the louder that we can be, it just pushes back, right? It lets the administration know that we're not happy with what they're doing, and it might make them think twice, right, when they think about opening this up or doing something similar in a place like Florida or Texas or Montana. So we need to apply pressure all the time and not stop.
Yeah, and I'll say just I've taken action through Patagonia Action Works and through numerous other places, but it in the script, right? Because this is all like you can't expect everyone to be an expert in all of this. It's just like it's just it's too daunting. But you have these great nonprofits who like that's what they do specifically, like that's
Mm-hmm.
their mission, and so like getting those talking points. And a lot of times I've had this experience with calling my elected officials. I mean, 9 times out of 10, it's a voicemail. So you're not talking to someone. So, I mean, you can literally just read a script and hit the same points, assuming you agree with them, right? But you can hit those points and it's easy and it takes a couple minutes out of your day.
Yeah.
Something you could easily do on your lunch break and you feel better about actually doing something to protect the places that we love.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned you can follow the script, and all these places, organizations do their best to provide talking points that they think resonate. But really, what your elected official wants to hear is one from you, from their constituents. And I think the strongest messages also bring in a story or a memory or some sort of tie to the place, right? Those stories tend to last longer, they resonate more. It just shows how much you care. I think it's easy to just hit the talking points, and I think it's useful and necessary so that the people who are listening on the other line have it reinforced over and over again. But if you go and talk about how this is where you fell in love with fishing or with camping, and it's a place that you go back to with friends and family over and over again, that really hits home for a lot of these people who are input or taking in these calls, and thinking about how to vote on a particular issue.
Love it. Well, on the advocacy front, and for anglers, right? So obviously, the number one thing that you could take away if you listen to this episode is you should definitely contact your elected officials and whatever for whatever it is, just get more involved. But what do you think that maybe the fishing community, how could we step up more beyond that?
That's a great question. You mentioned engaging with elected officials. I go back to voting. We have midterms coming up, right? So you find a candidate that you align with. You vote where your values are, and then you continue to hold them accountable while they're in office, right? Making sure that they're actually representing you. But I think continuing to recreate in the places that you love, right? Because that brings business to where those areas are. You're supporting the local communities. I think anglers have a unique voice, right? Because traditionally the hunting and angling community, might lean a little bit more conservative or might lean a little bit more in the middle, right? So it's a really important voice that folks want to hear from. I think getting engaged with a local nonprofit, there are a number of waterkeeper organizations and other organizations that are focused particularly on your stretch of river, right, where you like to fish. So volunteering with them, supporting them, financially or with your time, those all help. And I think bringing friends, right, and telling them, sharing that love of place, explaining to them what the situation is, right, what might be under threat, and getting them engaged as well, right? Spreading that message, I think, goes a really long way. So, continuing to do what anglers do, right, and what they love to do, I think is vital. But it's not going to, I think it will be a stronger message if you combine that with the advocacy. Like you mentioned, it doesn't take a lot, right? It doesn't need to take a big portion of your day or of your life. A call can take a couple minutes. Following an organization on social media just so you're staying plugged in. takes a click of a button. So there are small ways that we can stay connected to the issues and engage on the issues that don't require a lot of time. But when you add up that collective action, right, that's where the strength comes in. I don't think we have the luxury of being apathetic right now, because the decisions that are made today are going to impact us for years to come. So the time is now. As overused as that might be, I think it's really really true now more than ever.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors.
We set out with the New Earth Project to really start a movement.
It's a global coalition of people who are deeply concerned and want to accelerate the transition away from problematic packaging to more sustainable solutions.
Our entire value proposition was built on helping companies package things better. We were doing sustainability before sustainability was cool. We just called it packaging optimization. And packaging optimization really is about using less. And we built our whole business on that. People send us their products, their goods, and we help them design packaging systems and solutions for the least possible cost, utilizing the least amount of material. Use less is always the right answer.
And that's what I see with companies like a New Earth Project, is it's like we're just trying to create solutions for big companies and small, that makes it easier for them, cheaper for them, whatever it is, and then has less impact. Not just trying to tell people you should have less impact and making the choice forced on them. Like, make it better for everybody, and it'll make it better for the whole world.
We see the problem, and we are with you.
Yeah. And I'll say, you mentioned Waterkeeper. I've just got to give a shout out to Charleston Waterkeeper here. And one of my favorite ways to give back to the resource, they do a lot of litter sweeps and stuff like that, which I participated in, which is also a really fun family activity for your kids, something to do. But we also here, we recycle our oyster shells. So we collect oyster shells and then we go out and build new reefs. And as an angler, I just think that's like such a cool way to give back to the resource, right? You're creating a living shoreline. It's cleaning the water. It's enhancing the fishery. It's just such a cool way to give back. And Charleston Waterkeeper here does a great job. So if anyone's looking for a way to get active here locally, check them out, give them a follow. And those are great, excellent points, right? You need to advocate, but you also need to back that up with action. And I think that is where you get inspired and you want to bring your friends or your family along and get them involved too. So those are great points.
I think I'd be a bad board member if I didn't mention, there are a number of folks in the fishing community, right, who run their own businesses. We're a founding member of Conservation Alliance, right? So we have over 270 members who come together, pool resources for environmental advocacy and grant making. The Conservation Alliance does a great job of representing the business voice on public lands and waters fights. So, you can consider joining Conservation Alliance, right? It plugs you into advocacy opportunities. It connects you with other businesses who are thinking about the same issues that you might be thinking about. So it's a great place to get more engaged, right? And again, it doesn't necessarily need to require a lot of your time. There are a number of different ways you can engage based on how engaged you want to be, but they do a really great job of making it easy for folks to sign on to letters to members of Congress, to help write op-eds, to share social media, to come up with events to engage community members. So, I think of Conservation Alliance as a really wonderful place for businesses to dip their toes into advocacy, and hopefully that leads on to a path of greater involvement, but it doesn't need to be. The Conservation Alliance is strong, has a wonderful staff and team in place. I know you had Paul on your podcast a little bit ago who talked about Conservation Alliance, but it really is a great collective of industries coming together to push back against the threats that we're seeing.
Yeah, and I'll shamelessly give TCA a plug too, right? I mean, I'm a member, and the reason that I'm a member, which is a cool way to structure this, if your company is considering becoming 1% for the planet, you can elect TCA. You can have as many environmental and nonprofit partners as you want, but you can elect TCA as one of yours, and so you're a 1% for the planet member. From a business perspective, it's great to get that logo recognition. Same thing with the Conservation Alliance, but also it's a way, like, I run a small business. Like I can't be everywhere doing everything, and it's a way for me to be able to support and advocate for the things that I care about, which are public lands, because I have a deep personal connection to them. It's where I learned how to fly fish, and it's an easy way for me to support an organization who I know is fighting for the things that I believe in. Not to mention, there's lots of great networking opportunities and ways to meet other like-minded businesses. But yeah, if you're a brand owner listening to this, the season is the sustainability blueprint of the sustainable angler, and I think that. To your point, like it is a great way where if your brand isn't ready to advocate heavily, to rely on an organization that's sort of doing that for you, and you're supporting it, and you get additional benefits as a result. So, again, brand owners out there, if you're going, hey, we're really trying to get more involved with conservation, I think that's a great way to do it while simultaneously getting active locally, and having volunteer events and stuff like that. But
Yep.
I think those are all great points. So we mentioned earlier, right? We were talking about threats, and kind of what we're seeing right now is we've already covered, right? With public lands, tons of threats. What about opportunities? Can we are there opportunities?
Yeah, it's. I wish there were more opportunities. I'm hoping that with midterms we have a little bit of leverage, right, to start to advance some more proactive conservation wins in the future. But it feels like the reality right now is defense, and making sure that we're holding the line and doing everything that we can to mitigate the impacts that we're seeing right now. So, I think the opportunity now is to be loud and to make our voices heard, and it's going to be instrumental in setting us up for success moving forward. The more that we can stop now, the less we have to try to undo when we have the opportunity to do that. But I think one of the bright spots that we've seen, right, and this is less of an opportunity, but it is something that we can hang our hats on. Over the summer, you had Senator Lee from Utah proposing to sell off over 3 million acres of public lands under the guise of affordable housing, but without any mention of what that affordable housing would look like. So trying to transfer ownership of our federal lands to state ownership so that they can, potentially open that up to all sorts of industry. And I think the American people really came together to voice strong opposition to that plan. You had Republicans and Democrats, you had the big greens, you had hunting and fish, you had faith leaders, you had all sorts of people come together to say, this is not what we want, this is not what is reflective of the America that we want to see. There was some interesting polling that came out from the Colorado College Conservation in the West poll recently, and basically they poll likely voters across the West and ask about attitudes towards public lands. And you had, I think it was like 75% of voters would prefer that their elected official emphasize conservation and recreation over energy production. You had about 90% of people wanting to keep national monuments in place. And you can say those numbers are skewed, right, if you have more people on the left taking it, but 87% of MAGA supporters said that they want monuments kept in place, right? So We are at this really critical moment in time, this really important moment in time where you're seeing these attempts to sell off public lands really galvanizing folks and coming into some form of agreement around what we want our future to look like when it comes to public lands and to recreation and to extraction. So, it's really heartening to see that those numbers have been increasing over time. I think as the threats have increased, you've seen people being more willing to step up and say, like, no, this is not what we want. Public lands and waters are one of the few truly bipartisan issues that we have, so we need to take advantage of that. So I think the opportunity is there for us to make our voices heard, to let our officials know what we want from management of these lands, and hopefully they listen. I mentioned earlier, right? You have all these examples, and you have people who are still pursuing an extractive agenda, but we need to hold them accountable. We need to let them know. I'm sure there are opportunities that are occurring at state levels, through different legislation. In California, we have marine protected area processes that are happening to expand our current network of marine protected areas. So there are opportunities to weigh in at a local level to really move conservation forward while we try to hold the line on the federal level. So I don't want to paint the picture that everything is lost right now. There's certainly opportunities in local government, at state government levels, to really get a couple wins under our belt while we do this. And I think, again, the fact that we have resisted public land sell-offs multiple times, is really exciting. Another example is in Big Bend National Park. I think it was recently announced that they wanted to build parts of a border wall through this iconic national park. And local officials, local citizens, environmentalists, and others said, like, absolutely not. This is not what we want. And they've sort of backed off of that proposal for now. So advocacy really does help. And we have the chance to engage with those folks now and try to stop some of the harms that they're perpetrating.
Yeah, and I think too that the getting sort of active locally while having this sort of think global, act global, whatever the terminology, the old saying is. Is true, right? You've got to be engaged locally and kind of know what's going on while also seeing the bigger picture of, like, okay, this is federal public lands policy, and even beyond that, right? To think even bigger, it's like, well, then it's climate change that affects us all and is part of this. But I'm curious, as Patagonia funds a lot of different grassroots organizations. What are some of the characteristics y'all look for when y'all are deciding how to just to grant? Is it grants? To give grants?
Yeah.
Award grants. Yeah, that's what I was looking for.
Yeah, we go through a pretty extensive process. We have criteria that we've listed out on our website in terms of the things that we do and do not fund. But really, what I look for when I am thinking about these organizations, right, is, are they listening to their communities? Are they truly rooted in community? Are they taking in ideas and opinions from the folks who live in the area in which they operate? And are they lifting those up? Are they giving these communities a chance to lead? We also think very much about this idea of grassroots advocacy and organizing, right? Are you providing pathways for folks to engage in these processes? Public comment is such a bedrock of our processes, not just environmentally, right, but about everything within the government and what it controls. So are you providing easy opportunities for your folks to engage and bringing them along on this ladder of activism and engagement? We want to make sure that they are representative of the communities that they're in, right? So do they have a diverse set of stakeholders? Are they engaging with maybe non-traditional allies? Are they incorporating communities that have often been left out of the conversation when it comes to conservation? And then, we also look at, okay, well, what are the goals? How are they tracking? What's their, what have they been doing in the past? And, we often have conversations with a number of these nonprofits as well, right? It's not just an application intake, but we try to get to know them as much as we can. We try to make sure that they're aligned with the values of Patagonia, making sure that places are protected in the long term. So there's a number of different processes and criteria that we look for, but we really want to make sure that these groups are engaging their communities in a thoughtful and strategic way and working towards outcomes. It's we try not to put too much thought into key results, right, over the last year. We understand that some of these nonprofits operate on shoestring budgets. They're limited with capacity and resources. And we don't want to penalize a smaller group just because they don't have the staff to pursue everything that they want. But if we see, if we see progress, if we see really thoughtful engagement with community, that really weighs heavily on the decision making. So yeah, part of it just comes from having those conversations and getting to know people and understanding their work and understanding the context. If we base it purely off victories from the previous year, when you have an administration like the one that we do, you're not going to be granting to anyone because there are very few proactive victories that we can pursue. So again, lots of different factors that go into it. We try to make sure that we're being that we're distributing our dollars across the United States, right, and not concentrating in one particular area. The grants program was set up to be community focused and community led and support the places where we do business. We've expanded that to operate in places where maybe we don't have as much of a retail presence. But we want to be, we want to know about the issues that are affecting your local community and the impacts that it's having, and how, you're able to engage with those folks and help push back.
Yeah, I love it. You mentioned too, like some of these nonprofits are dealing with all sorts of things. I'm a board member for a local nonprofit called the Sustainability Institute here in Charleston, and they do lots of great work. They help low-income families with critical home repairs and energy efficiency to help them be able to afford to pay their power bills, which, by the way, increased 13% last year, which is pretty wild. But anyway, they do lots of great work, habitat restoration work, and they were affected too, like I'm sure a lot of other nonprofits, by some of the grants that had been guaranteed to them through EPA and others, and they've been put on hold. So anyway, if you're a local nonprofit listening out there, we hear you, and that's a tough spot to be in. But hopefully, we'll get some of the stuff worked out.
I have a lot of respect for folks who are on the ground doing the hard work. It's sometimes not the most glamorous, and it's long nights, long weekends. The work doesn't stop, but they are really what keeps all of us going. It's what inspires us at Patagonia to continue to support the groups that we support, and why we're so committed to making sure that our dollars are going to these organizations.
Yeah, love it. All right. So one other thing that I want to mention, this is kind of, it's on topic, but it's back to public lands. Because I read Patagonia's CEO recently had an op-ed, and now apparently there's, and I'm not going to get this, so you may just have to take it, but with Grand Staircase National Monument, which is in Utah, what's the latest there?
Yeah, so similar to Boundary Waters, Congress is trying to use what's called the Congressional Review Act to invalidate, mineral withdrawals and management plans and all sorts of other ways in which conservation has happened in the past. I think it's important to note that this has never been done before. A lot of the things that they are trying to do have never really been considered CRA-able, right? Because they didn't fit certain parameters. But recently, the Utah delegation introduced resolutions in both the House and the Senate, basically invalidating the management plan that took years to develop, that included collaboration and input from stakeholders across the state, right? Scientists, academics, local businesses, tribes, all came together to come up with a way to manage this 1.9 million acre monument, right? A huge swath of land. So it's really thoughtfully done. And the delegation has said, we don't find that valid. We want to revert back to a previous management plan for a smaller portion of land, and a management plan that is a little bit more favorable to extractive industry. So it's one of the first attacks that we've seen on national monuments during this current administration, right? President Trump tried to shrink the size of the monument. In his first term, President Biden restored it back to 1.9 million acres. But the fear is that you have a management plan that cannot be, made substantially similar, right? So that means anything that is in the current one around conservation, if it looks remarkably close, or if it looks close to what we currently have, we're not allowed to use it. We're not allowed to create a management plan like that. So again, it would revert back to less protective designation, I think, for the status of the monument. It doesn't change the monument boundaries, but it just changes how it is managed. So that impacts visitor enjoyment. It impacts how the resources that are found in the monument are managed, right? So if you have cultural artifacts or these places that are not being protected, and you go to see them or to recreate in them, you might not be able to, right? Because they'll be gone, they'll be dug up, they'll, be damaged in some way. So your experience is hurting, right? And that drives down visitation numbers, that impacts local communities and their economic lifeblood. So the threat is imminent, right? These resolutions were introduced. They haven't come to a vote yet. But again, another opportunity for us to make sure that we're reaching out to folks to vote no on this. That's really the only way that we're going to stop this. I think the threat is also that you take this and you apply it to other national monuments across the country. We saw a number designated during President Biden's term. Grand Staircase was actually first designated in 1996. So who knows where this ends. So the CRA, the Congressional Review Act, has been kind of a sledgehammer that the Republicans are trying to use to attack public lands. But I think what gets lost sometimes is that, this creates uncertainty for business, right? And that's what the purpose of the op-ed was, to use Boundary Waters and Grand Staircase as kind of case studies to talk about the use of CRA. But you're seeing folks from the oil and gas industry who are also saying, this might not be the best idea, right? This could invalidate all the lease sales that we've received over the last couple of decades. It puts them at risk, right? It just increases uncertainty into so much of a company's day-to-day and to the public's day-to-day. So it's interesting to see how you have conservationists and oil and gas who are actually using some of the same talking points. I never thought I'd say that in my life. But yeah, it just reinforces this idea of not knowing what's coming next and making it really difficult to plan. So it's a blunt tool. And I think the more that we can speak up in opposition, hopefully that dissuades them from using this tool moving forward.
Yeah. Well, I love all this, right? Because this is this is an advocacy, almost like focused interview, which is so cool and I think so needed for a lot of brands and individual anglers, right? Who just kind of you start to feel helpless, and it's like, okay, well, here's one thing that's going to make you feel better is advocating. Another thing that'll make you feel better is volunteering with a local nonprofit and helping your local fishery, right? These are it's like, if you take a Stoic's point of view, there's so much that's out of our control. What can we control, right? And those are things you can control. You can volunteer in your local community. You can take 5 minutes on your lunch break and advocate. And I think that's really powerful and empowering for everyone who maybe is feeling a little daunted at the moment. So those are all great points. But I want to ask, because we're coming close to the top of our hour, you mentioned like when we reach out to our elected officials and sharing our stories, I want to turn that question on you and ask if you had a personal experience, maybe with a river, a fishery, or a moment outdoors that made you decide that this was the work you wanted to dedicate your life to.
Yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one. I think growing up in New York, we didn't have. I mean, we had access to public lands, but we had to work for it a little bit more. And I remember when I moved out west, I did a cross-country road trip, and my mom met me halfway, and we made a couple stops at national monuments and national parks. And I remember my mom crying when she got to the Grand Canyon, just thinking about how beautiful it was, right? And everyone knows the Grand Canyon. Everyone has a sense for what it is, but once you get there and you see the scale of it, it's really remarkable, and it's just hard to put in words. And I remember thinking, like, these are the places that we need to protect. These are the places that are invaluable to who we are and to what we are as a country. And it really reinforced in me that idea of, okay, conservation is what I want to be doing. It is where I want the direction of my life going. Since then, I've had a couple kids. I have 3 kids, and we try to get them in the outdoors as much as possible, whether it's a local hike or taking them camping, and just seeing the enjoyment that they get out of that is really inspiring. I hadn't really been camping until I met my wife, and she took me camping for the first time. And, just noticing the smells when you wake up in the morning, right? And hearing the birds, and waking up to beautiful vistas. It's a lot of small moments that have added up over time. And I'm fortunate. I live in the Los Angeles area. We have a lot of access. I'm actually in the foothills of the San Gabriel Mountains, which was a national monument that was expanded during President Biden's term. And I see that when I drive home every day. So it's a nice reminder to keep doing what we're doing. And yeah, it's hard. I also remember the first time I caught a fish in Long Island. I had a little Snoopy rod, and I was out there with my dad and my brothers. And I remember running down the beach to show my dad that I had caught this fish. And moments like that are irreplaceable. And at the time you might not understand what the threats are, right? But it sticks with you, and it becomes part of who you are. So I'm fortunate to be in the position that I'm in. I truly believe in the work that we're all doing as a movement, and I want to make sure that my kids and their kids and others have the same opportunities that I did.
Love it. All right, last question. Try and end on, that was pretty hopeful, but is there something else that gives you hope about this movement, this just anything? We'll take anything right now, Keith. We'll take any message about
Yeah, I mean, I think people are refusing to back down, right? People are finding ways to get engaged. We are broadening the tent a lot more than we used to. We're creating the next generation of activists. I mean, you see so many inspiring stories from the younger generation and their involvement in the climate movement. So I think we're in good hands. But we can't just rely on that and wait for them to come of age or to step into the spotlight. We need to make sure that we are doing everything we can to provide them the opportunity to continue their advocacy. So, it's not just in the United States; it's all over the world. People are rising up. People are being loud and making their voices heard. So, that gives me hope moving forward.
Love it. Well, Keith, where can anglers, listeners go to? I know it's Patagonia Action Works, but that's its own website. Is that where folks can go to
Yep.
start advocating?
Yeah, you can find it on our normal website, patagonia.com, and click on activism. You can Google Patagonia Action Works. It lets you type in your area code, and it will connect you with nonprofits close by, connect you with actions that they've posted. And it's a great resource to identify ways to get engaged. So we are here. We're trying to do everything that we can to make sure that people are or have the opportunities to engage, and we hope that folks take advantage.
Cool. Well, Keith, really appreciate you doing this. Stoked that our paths crossed and through the Conservation Alliance. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I appreciate everything that you're doing and the Patagonia's doing, and that the Conservation Alliance is doing too. So thanks a lot.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. Really appreciate all the work that you're doing, making sure that this message is getting out, sharing resources with folks, and for being a member of Conservation Alliance. It's really wonderful. Glad we had a chance to meet a couple months ago. Look forward to staying in conversation.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to head over to emergerstrategies.com for all your sustainability consulting needs, and check out our new The Compliance Ready Brand Blueprint, which is designed to get your sustainability house in order in 30 days or less.